Okay, right. Welcome to the Scrutiny Board Environment, Housing and Communities for February. This meeting is being webcast on the Council's website so that any interested members of the public that are unable to observe in person can still observe remotely. So my name is Councillor Barry Anderson. I chair this particular Scrutiny Board.
Hello everyone, Natasha Prosser, Clerk to the Board.
Morning everyone, Javid Akhtar, Little London and Woodhouse Ward.
Good morning, Councillor Eleanor Thompson, Guiseley and Rawdon Ward.
Good morning, Kaylee Brooks, Little London and Woodhouse Ward.
Good morning, Councillor John Tudor, Killingbeck and Seacroft Ward.
Morning, Councillor Asghar Khan for Bermontos and Richmond Hill Ward.
Morning, Councillor Annie Maloney, Beeston and Holbeck Ward.
Morning, Emma Trickett, Parks and Countryside Service.
Hello, Sean Flesher, Chief Officer Parks and Countryside.
Good morning, everyone. Councillor Trish Smith, Pudley Ward.
Morning, everyone. Councillor Sandy Lake, Otley and Yeadon Ward.
Good morning, Councillor Paul Wadsworth, Guys in Rawdon Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. My name is Councillor Sam Murphy. I'm the Exec Member for Public Health and Active Lifestyles. Apologies, I was waiting in the waiting area. I thought I'd get invited in. Sorry about that. And I was waiting for the officers. Apologies.
Becky Atherton, Principal Scrutiny Advisor.
Thanks, Chair. Agenda item 1, there's no appeals against refusal of inspection of documents. Agenda item 3, there's no items excluded from the press and the public. Agenda item 3, there's no formal late items. Agenda item 4, can I ask members to declare any interests? Agenda item 5, apologies from Councillor Carlisle. And that's it, Chair.
That's it. Thank you. Should find that you've been sent a copy of the scrutiny report that covers all scrutiny boards in terms of their views on the budget. We had asked for other information in respect of car parking charges, but that's no longer going ahead. So the officers have been asked not to bother providing that information now. And in terms of minute 51, Becky is going to be meeting with Ian Strickland to pick up the issues we raised about future performance reporting as well. Anybody, any other issues on the minutes? Yes, Councillor Khan.
Chair, and the section housing homeless, we were supposed to get a breakdown, some more information. It says it was confirmed that information can be broken down further, but we haven't received that information, have we?
I've sent it up. So that's on page 8 of the agenda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Second paragraph.
Yeah. Principal items we've got today. The first one, which is on the green space. So for those of you who have been on this board for some time, we were asked to look at the parks and green space strategy some time ago. We made some comments, officers went away, reflected and made a number of changes. I would argue to improve it. I don't know what they think, but it was we worked cooperatively to bring things forward, and we asked for to be kept in the loop so that they would bring updates to us. And so that's the first one we've got. So, Councillor Reif, do you want to introduce this item and then pass over to Sean to?
Yes, Chair, I will do. Thank you. So this report provides an update on progress with delivering the actions in the Leeds Parks and Green Spaces strategy, which was originally published in February 22 following an extensive public consultation. The strategy sets out our vision for Leeds City Council's Parks and Countryside Service to provide the best parks and green spaces in the UK, along with the actions that will be undertaken by the service delivering the vision over the next 10-year period. To ensure the vision is achieved, 8 priority areas were recognised and are outlined in the strategy, including health and wellbeing, climate and biodiversity, and financial sustainability, which links to our 3 pillars of the Best City ambition. Since the publication of the strategy, the Parks and Countryside Service have been focusing on the priorities and the actions set out in it and outlined in the report. For me, some of the highlights include the continued good work with local communities and partners, the ongoing improvements to parks, and the annual planting of 50 hectares of trees to help tackle the climate emergency, and significant investment in our visitor facilities across the city, including sports pitches, playgrounds, visitor attractions like Home Farm at Temple Newsham. I'll hand over to Emma to talk us through the report, but before I do, can I just take this time to just acknowledge and thank our Parks and Countryside staff for all the work that they do to make sure that we have excellent parks and provision across the city. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just, and I assume you've read this, so I'll just spend 5 minutes running through it as directed by the chair. So as Councillor Arif said, the report focuses, it provides an update on progress with delivering the actions set out in the Parks and Green Spaces strategy 1 year on from its publication. It basically covers a period from March to December 2022. So the background section on the first page just provides a reminder of what the strategy was all about, which Councillor Arif's just run through. So I won't dwell on that. I'll move directly to the second page, where I've pulled out the highlights from the update by priority. So you can also refer to, obviously, Appendix 1, the Parks and Green Spaces strategy, and Appendix 2, which is basically several spreadsheets listing all the actions in the strategy, and then an update on what we've done with regards to each action. So that's where all the detail is. Obviously, this is just a highlight report. So starting with the quality priority, we were pleased that all city parks, so the big ones like Roundy, Middleton and Temple Newsham, achieved the National Green Flag Standard in 2022 for being independently rated as good quality parks. Also in 2022, 72% of community parks achieved the Leeds Quality Park Standard, which means we've continued to increase the number of parks achieving LQP, which contributes one of our 2 key performance indicators, the aim of which is for all our community parks to achieve LQP as soon as possible. Moving on to the climate and biodiversity priority at 3.10. The second key performance indicator in the strategy was to plant 50 hectares of trees each year to help combat the climate emergency. And we are pleased that we achieved that KPI in the 2021-22 season, and we're on target to do the same this year. So we're currently tree planting, and that's due to be completed at the end of February. Also in line with the biodiversity and climate priority, we reduced seasonal bedding by 50% in 2022 and replaced it with a mix of pollinator-friendly wildflowers. And there's an image of one of those at Farnley Park. And they were really popular with the public. So for the Access for All priority at 3.15, in terms of the goal of ensuring our parks and green spaces feel safe and welcoming for girls and women, we've been involved in an externally funded research project in partnership with the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. The findings of that research, which is ongoing but nearly finished, will contribute to the production of a design guide that we'll be able to use for ensuring future park design is as female friendly as possible. And as part of the scheme, we also received a small amount of funding to make improvements to Woodhouse and Holbeck Moors, so they feel safer for girls and women, in line with findings of the research from local girls and women, what they want from their parks. With regards to the culture priority at 3.19, we're continuing to progress some very exciting plans to improve the cultural offer of the city by developing our visitor attractions in key parks. So this includes an indoor play barn that's currently being constructed at Temple Newsham Home Farm, a new flagship play area at Lotherton, and plans for a natural history themed indoor play area at Tropical World, which is currently in development. We're also proud to have hosted over 800 events on our parks and green spaces, including 159 that were led by communities. So they included stuff like fun fairs, community galas, sponsored walks and rock concerts. And plans are in place for us to host several events this year as part of Leeds City of Culture. Moving on to the child-friendly priority at 3.27. We've continued to invest in our play facilities, which we know are really important for local families and for ensuring our sites are child-friendly. And in 2022, £530,000 of Section 106 was approved for investment in playgrounds at 11 different sites. With regards to the working with communities priority, as always, we continue to have good relationships with local communities and be well supported by volunteers, friends groups and the like. We are currently working with approximately 94 friends groups, 650 sports clubs and 58 self-managed allotment sites. And then for the financial sustainability priority, we continue to seek and invest external funds in our parks and green spaces. In 2022, £1.3 million of Section 106 was allocated for spending in local parks and green spaces. In addition, a bid to the Towns Fund for a range of work in Morley resulted in £3 million being secured for improvements to parks in that area. Unsuccessful bids were also made to the Levelling Up Fund for £16 million for investment in 8 community parks. We, as you'll be aware, we also get smaller pots of funding from grants such as WBI, Veolia and HLF, and they've been invested into various sites as well. And then lastly, for the health and wellbeing priority, we continue to invest time and money into our sports facilities such as football and rugby pitches where funding allows. And on the last page, you can see an image of a new multi-use games area in Gilderson, which we've developed with the Parish Council. So hopefully the report demonstrates how we've been implementing the actions in the strategy, focusing on the priorities set out in it and continuing to work towards achieving the vision of providing the best parks and green spaces in the UK. Thank you.
Is that favouritism, Chair?
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you were in the pre-meeting, you would have known something that Councillor Brooks disclosed to us. And
No comments.
Right, okay. So thank you for that report, and thanks for all the work that's being done across the city. It's really, really important. I know that it's very emotive. It's a very emotive sort of area of the council, isn't it? So like, yeah, thank you. 3.34. So there's I'm just wondering if you've got more sort of detail around the volunteering and like raising capacity within communities to do that volunteering and also how resources are being prioritised as well. Because you're not just investing once. No, wait, you are investing once, but it pays off and off and off and off and off. If we're able to just do a little bit of training with friends groups and say this is how it is that you apply for funding for particular projects, and it'd also have a really positive impact on the wider community as well, because those people will then have the skills to apply for funding for other projects too. So I think like just a small amount of investment and support would ripple out across the community. And then 3.36, I'm just wondering how inflation and supply chain issues have affected the delivery of parks improvement, because I know of at least one project in my ward where we're having to completely review what we deliver. And then finally, it sort of crosses over into the next item. But I was wondering whether there's been any thought for provision of new green spaces, and whether any thought has been given to green burials, because we've obviously got a very pressing need to increase tree coverage. If we were able to also offer green burials with tree planting as part of that service, that would be amazing, because currently all you've got is cremation or traditional cemetery burial. And I just feel that with the climate emergency and people being much more aware of it, that's definitely an area of growth that could be considered. Thank you.
We've got the figures in the full document, so you can refer to the current figures for volunteering. In terms of expanding capacity, we've got a number of rangers who support volunteer groups, and then we've got the technical officers as well, and we have a range of means to allow them to become more independent. So we have community partnership agreements. We can advise them on getting their own insurance so that they can work independently once they become confident. So we try and empower community groups to be able to become independent where they want to. We also try and look for, as well as our sort of core set of rangers who support groups and the technical officers, we look at opportunities to get external funding to support community engagement. So that is the point at 3.34, where our charity partners, Love Leeds Parks, they've recently secured funding for community engagement projects in 6 parks across the city. So that's the kind of way we do it, and try and expand the support we provide for communities.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, if I can just to expand on that. So we've also got the Parks Forum, which is made up of a group of partners that come together periodically, supported by officers within the service. And one of their functions and roles is to actually share their experience and encourage each other, advise other friends groups about insurance, how you can get started, all that sort of thing. So, we do work with quite a number of partners to be able to do that. And then, as well as having our own outreach team that Emma's referred to, we do also have other partnerships with organisations such as Groundwork, with the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, with the RSPB, who actually help us look after some sites, and they also help us engage with volunteers for those sites as well. So we don't just do everything on ourselves, we do try and use partnerships as well to give extra capacity.
Yeah, I mean, we've got Voluntary Action Leeds as well in the city. Do they have any input into any of the training? Because I know that they can deliver it and they can advise on it. I just wonder as to the sort of accessibility of this. Like, it seems to me that if there's existing friends groups, then they get support. But how is it that we're going out and seeking people to like nurture to do that?
So so the Leeds Parks Forum has their own website, effectively, that people can access, and on that website there's lots of information about how you can develop your own group, how you can get involved, what those key contacts are, and then there's also a referral process onto our team then, so that so if somebody's got some affiliation with a particular site, then we can pick that up and help and support them, and hopefully get them to a position whereby they can actually have some form of stewardship agreement where we agree, and they can take over more of a doing role on site, as well as just paying an interest. So we do have that. I mean, in terms of Voluntary Action Leeds, do you want to answer that, Emma?
Yeah, we do sometimes advertise volunteer opportunities, so we're aware of it, but it's probably a good idea to remind the forum about the availability of that support.
Yes. Sorry, Chair. There's additional questions that haven't been answered yet.
Sorry, can I come in back on the back of the volunteer one as well? I think there's something that we did that worked quite well when we did the tree planting in Hare Hills. We had an Eventbrite event on, and we actually got quite a few volunteers that signed up from across different parts of the city that came over. We had quite a few students actually, so I think that's another way of getting the volunteers, and I think that was a really positive way because we ended up having loads of volunteers. I know that happens as well.
Programs are absolutely absolutely oversubscribed. So, we've got for the tree planting, for example, we're holding quite a large number of volunteer events for tree planting, and they are fully subscribed. They go really fast. So it really, really works well for us, does that?
Yeah, there were some other questions.
On green burials, yeah. So obviously, we don't offer a specific green burial service. We do at the moment offer a memorial tree option. So that is one way that people can recognise their loved ones. But it is something that Councillor Reeves has asked us to look at in terms of, I know we've got a paper on burial capacity coming up next, and you can see that there is potential to actually offer a green burial option. And that is something that we're actively looking at about how we can take that forward.
Yeah. Sorry, there was the house inflation and supply chain issues affected parks improvement.
I do apologise, and that's a good question. Yes, so we had during COVID, of course, most of the construction was suspended because our workforce was deployed to more other prioritised tasks. And then coming out of that, what we found is obviously we had some quite big supply chain issues. So a lot of the, obviously we work in a global market. A lot of the, for example, playground equipment is sourced from all over the world. So there was significant delays on obtaining parts for equipment. And also there was a shortage of construction materials. So to the point that that a lot of our suppliers were actually effectively rationing supply across their customers, so that to ensure that everybody could do a bit. But of course, it did slow down the amount of development work that we wanted to do. And as now that supply chain is beginning to ease, we've now run into the issue of inflation. So, so like some of the costs have gone up. I know inflation is running at about 10%, but some of our costs have actually gone up a lot more than that, particularly petroleum, oil-based products such as tarmac for surfacing, safer surfacing for playgrounds, that has significantly increased, which has unfortunately, even though we do allow a contingency in some of the schemes, has meant that we've had to revisit those, to value engineer, to look at how we can still deliver as much of that scheme as possible, but within the budget framework that we've been set. So it's a particular challenge, and it was a good question.
Sorry, Chair. Have you got the figures for how many sites are affected by that, and by how much money we're short to deliver what we wanted to deliver before?
I don't have a specific figure combined, but just about every scheme that we are doing that involves any form of construction or material supply will have an effect, and on average that will be 10%, but there are some good examples out there that for example, where we've got specific projects where there has been a direct effect on inflation, where that is quite auditable, and I could provide that, but I don't have that for every individual scheme that we've got. So the construction schemes go from quite small schemes to quite large ones, but even so, so the amounts are different, but the general inflation rate of 10% is probably a good guide.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for this report. Looking at your playgrounds, which let me just say that we are all proud to have the open spaces that we have in our city, but there are certain areas in the city where we don't have much of the open spaces. Neither some of our residents have gardens or backyards, especially in London City Centre and in Hyde Park as well. So investing in playgrounds, I think, is quite crucial to see, especially with regards to looking at the one which is in Portsea, where you invested I'm sure, good amount of money. But I think it's good to see these sort of facilities across the city for all our young people, so they can enjoy the active lifestyle in our parks. Second point is that let me declare an interest, Chair. I have a normal walks now in our parks across the city, and what I have noticed, the dog waste parks, we are lacking in some part of the city. So I think if the members can find the areas where it could be funded by either yourself or the hub, or from the mice money, like the one that we have just put 2 bins in our neck of the wood from the hub money. So I think it's something, even though it's small, but if you're taking your dog out for a walk, it's crucial to have some sort of location where people can dispose the dog's waste. Thank you.
So just to feedback, at the moment, investment in plays, obviously, where members choose to invest their 106, where you're fortunate enough to have some 106 within the ward, you know, that is one of the discretional delegated functions from the service, in terms of that's very much up to members about what the priorities are in their particular ward regarding that. But the issue we have is that the only really significant investment we do have currently is from 106 funding, and that does vary throughout the city. And I think it is recognised that some inner city areas don't have the opportunity for development, but actually would benefit from significant investment in terms of the green spaces. So, I mean, that is one of the reasons why we tried to make sure that there were quite a lot of parks included in the Levelling Up fund bids as part of an overall package of regeneration, because that was a good way of getting investment into areas that you wouldn't have the 106 funding. We're also doing, what we're doing also is where we're doing the development work in terms of the sustainable financial situation of the service. What we are doing is Councillor Reeve asked us to create a fund to top slice some of the surplus that we'll make from that, and use that to reinvest in the service in some way. So some of those schemes, the playbound's going to be the first one that's coming online this spring. But whatever that playbound makes in terms of surplus, some of that funding then will then be used to actually be reinvested in some sites that wouldn't normally benefit from 106. So that's a start in terms of having more of a discretional fund that we can certainly take forward. And also Councillor Rees asked us to look at produce a paper, which we've gone, it recognises in this report, we went to SIV with, about how we can use more discretionary funding, either through the form of SIL or capital, to actually allow us to invest in, again, in areas that wouldn't normally benefit from 106. So actually, you know, so a more sustainable, targeted investment solution is something that we are actively looking at.
Thank you for that, Sean. One thing which I forgot to mention was that when we have the play areas for the children, in some parts, and especially one I can think of in my ward, where it is so closer to the main road, and kids are kids in the day, and they can follow the football if whichever direction is going, and the safety of that child could be crucial. So what we got in place for areas where there's a primary school, there's a community center, and then you got busy road going on, and we've already seen some casualties over the years in that particular road. So what we got in place to make sure when we are putting these play areas, to make sure the safety of those children are important. So we have some sort of screening or fencing where the child cannot follow the football or whatever going in a direction to the busy road.
Yeah, so thanks for that. I mean, that is quite challenging, but what we do is we undertake a risk assessment, a place assessment before we actually do any new development for that type of facility. And then where we realise that there is a risk that a child can wander out onto a road, then obviously we'll look at what mitigation can be undertaken to actually stop that. So for a good example is ball stop fencing on a multi-use games area site. So effectively, you know, hopefully the ball doesn't get pinged out of that space and stays within that play zone. Also in playgrounds, we generally put fencing around, so that it leaves it, you know, so that it does actually give parents an opportunity to you know, grab, you know, keep an eye on the child within a defined area. And also sort of filter the, if somebody does want to leave that area, you have to go through the gated area, not actually just straight out onto a space. So those are the mitigations that you can put in place, but it is a balance, because obviously what we also want to do is make sure that children can play safely. And that's not just about the actual quality of the facilities, but that's also about making sure that they are overlooked and not necessarily in an isolated area. So it's not necessarily a bad thing for a playground to be in an area that you can actually quite easily see from the road. So it's getting that balance right, really, in terms of provision. But you do have to put those mitigations in place.
Thank you for that, Sean. But what about those sites where there is a danger, let's say, and there are areas, and we are fortunate in our neck of the wood with regards to Section 106 money, but there are some areas in the city where they don't have 106 agreement money. So what if someone basically highlights a particular issue, how long does that take for that particular fence, or to make sure that area is safe for our children to have a walkabout, whatever? I mean, the site I'm referring to is the one next to the London Community Centre, which after school time, it gets really, really busy, and kids are waiting to go onto the swings or whatever, and they queue up. But then again, a mother with 2 or 3 children, she can't really keep an eye on every single child, and there are kids everywhere basically, and it's easy for those children to go onto the main road. So how long does it take before, if something comes to the attention, how soon can we deliver and make sure that all those children or any concerns, people are feeling safe in that environment?
Yeah, I was actually going to say if there's any specific examples where you've got concerns, but you've given me one, so I've made a note. So we'll look into that. So I mean, the reality of it is that obviously if it's high risk and there's funding available for us to undertake some mitigation, then we'll treat that as a priority.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair, and good to see Councillor Arif. And I also welcome this sport, and I want to thank Emma, but she's not here, but if you can pass my message. Yes. And I'll be a bit cheeky here. I just want to take this opportunity also to thank Sean, you know, for his service to Leeds. And, you know, since I've known you, Sean, about 10 years, you've been very approachable officer and very prompt. If we needed some information, you were very prompt anyway. So thank you for that service. Much appreciated. The question is, Sean, we've got 6 parks in Leeds that have won National Green Flag Award. Congratulations, well done. But there are some other parks in Leeds these are the major parks in the city of Leeds, but we do have a community parks. And my question is, how are they getting looked after? What is the strategy for those parks within those communities? Because the last 3 years has been very, very difficult for all of us due to the COVID and pandemic. And the only place where people wanted to go have a fresh air walk around was in your parks. And I've got some more questions to answer. If you can answer those questions, I'll come back with some.
So yeah, so we obviously we've got the Leeds Quality Park Standard. So effectively, we've got our major city parks are assessed to the Green Flag Standard, and the Leeds Quality Park Standard is effectively the field assessment of the Green Flag Standard. So it's exactly the same assessment, except you don't need the extensive management plans that back that up. So I mean, I'm pleased to say that the majority of our community parks do actually meet the Leeds Quality Park Standard, and the strategy has set quite a challenging target to get them all to the LQP standard as soon as possible. At the moment, I think the figure is 72% meet that target, and that has grown year on year on year. So we've been very fortunate, really, in terms of being able to invest in sites. And to be fair, because the investment choices are particularly through 106, are determined by members, you know, it's you as members that have effectively prioritised that and allowed us to deliver those targets. So we're very grateful to local ward members for that support. But as we get near that challenge, near that target, it's going to get more demanding and challenging, and it's going to get even more demanding way in areas that don't have that benefit from 106. And that is why, you know, we need to look at those other regeneration opportunities to actually so those parks and spaces will benefit from more directed investment.
Thank you, Chair. And also, how many park forums do we have in Leeds? And if there's a groups want to set up another forum in their own parks, because the forums, the community groups can raise some external funding within those parks. What help can they get? And also on Emma's presentation, 3.28, where are those 11 sites?
Okay, so yes, sorry about So so in terms of the number of friends groups, etc. So I think we've got about 60 friends of groups, and we've got 14 balloon groups, and there's lots of voluntary groups you can get involved with. We've only got one Parks Forum because effectively the Parks Forum is representatives from all those groups that come together to meet periodically. We give them regular updates, and they host their website, etc. And it's been really successful because as what's gone off the back of the Parks Forum is the Leeds Parks Fund, who've been successful in getting that funding. So that's really worked well. And then in terms of the 11 sites, those are you referring to the Morley Town?
No, on your 3.28 where Emma child-friendly priority.
Oh, right.
It said expenditure. Sorry, apologies. 3.28, 530k, section 106 was approved investment in playgrounds, 11 sites. Which are those sites?
Okay, I haven't got that figure to hand. Oh, you haven't got that. No, but we're happy to share that information. That's good.
Yes, and also, are we working with local schools? That's because what we want to do is encourage young people to get involved in our green spaces. And what's the strategy there for us?
We do have an education scheme, so we've got a couple of education officers. They do a lot of work at the visitor attractions, especially the zoos, because there's an obligation to provide education with zoos. They also provide sessions out in different parks, and we also aim to consult. So wherever we're like investing in improvements in any of our parks, we aim to consult young people. So we're developing a scheme to create plans on a page for all our community parks. And we're definitely going to be going into schools, talking to children about what they want to see in their local park for that scheme. So there are some statistics in here about how many children have been reached. I'm not sure it's on that page.
Not on that page, okay. I was just looking for that, but
yeah, because the strategy prioritises education about nature and conservation and caring for parks, so litter and obviously climate. And then again, the support for those visitor attractions. So that's where we've got our statistics. They're pretty good. There's like,
I think about 30,000 school children visits to directed school children visits to our attractions. And then that's not including all the rest of the work that we do on our other sites. But certainly those ones that are recorded, that there's about 30,000 children involved.
Yeah, just briefly, Chair. Thank you. That's really assuring. Can you, Sean, pass on my thanks to Vicky and John Ward? They've been brilliant. They've been having that conversation locally with elected members, and they have listened to us. And there's quite a few. We've got about 3 schemes going in Birmingham, Richmond Hill. So that's one to say thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of things. First off, I'd like to say thank you for the U-turn on the car parking charges. Excellent news. Really pleased for all the residents across the city. Thank you for that. Couple of other things. So we've heard about the investment and the fact that virtually all of it comes from Section 106. As you know, we've invested heavily in Pudsey. We've spent an awful lot of time, effort and money on our parks, and we were fortunate to be in that position. Not everybody is as fortunate, and we understand that. The Love Leeds Parks charity that was recently set up, I've suggested to Sean previously on my role as shadow member for Parks and Countryside that we look to concentrate on the parks and green spaces that don't have the 106 through that forum, and then try and encourage other elected members to invest their 106 money in their parks and green spaces. I think that is a fairer strategy across the city. The Leeds Parks Forum is excellent, but my comment there is they meet through the day, and a lot of the volunteers that we have work, so they can't actually make the meeting. So it might be an idea if there was any opportunity at all to, even if it was once a quarter, alternate meetings or once every third meeting, that they met on an evening or a weekend to allow other volunteers to actually get to those meetings. I know that I've deputised in the past for some of our groups. In terms of setting up other groups, it is really easy. And we were sent a list of all the Friends and In Blooms groups around about the 22nd of July. If anybody needs me to forward a spreadsheet onto them, I can do that because I've just pulled it up now. I think the biggest comment I've got with regards to this is we're still awaiting our tree management policy update, please. We're planting 50, well, however many hectares, 50 hectares or whatever across the city, 500 hectares. I forget the number now. Sorry, apologies. It is 50. I thought it was. Yeah, I thought it was. Thought, blimey, we're going to be in the middle of the Black Forest. Yeah, so that is absolutely fantastic, and I know that we've got the funding for that for the first 15 years of the lives of those trees and those areas. But we do need that policy urgently, because that 15 years is going to go in a blink of an eye. Those trees are going to grow, hopefully, and on top of that, we've got all the other trees and green spaces that we have now where we need to manage them. So we do desperately need that tree management policy updating, and because it does blight a lot of residents' lives. We've got residents who need permanent lighting on because of the dark shadow, the overshadowing of the trees, and the current policy is that you've no right to light, and things like that, and it just jars a little bit with the climate emergency. We need the trees, but we don't need to put lights and heating on because residents are being overshadowed by the trees. And it's that kind of thing. So I do think we need that tree management policy updated, please. Thank you. That's me.
Yeah, so just coming, we did give, Scrutiny had a working group that looked at the tree policy, and we did give an undertaking that we would look and review that. So that review is under process. So that is something that we are actively looking at. And I don't think I can't remember what the first point was, but I don't think it needed actual direct response. Oh, sorry, the Parks Forum.
Yeah,
So that was it. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, I know the actual Parks Forum, they do actually meet periodically in an evening, because I know I've done 1 or 2 evening meetings with them in terms of an update from the service. So I don't know when their last one was, to be fair, but go on.
Well, I used to be secretary and they alternated, so they met quarterly, 2 in the day and 2 in the evening. So I don't think that's changed, but we can look into it.
Yeah, I've just never noticed one of them.
A quick one. From the priorities in the strategy, access for all, see, a very important one. And I bring this up here not to criticize, because I think the department is doing fantastic work. But I hear from residents reasonably frequently about access problems, and it's really about A-frames, because, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but mobility scooters for infirm or elderly people are getting bigger and bigger. So we've done walk-arounds with with residents. I spent 2 hours with one gentleman traversing all of Fernville Fields. So I just bring it up really for further consideration, that what is the strategy in terms of, you can sometimes, so obviously we have the pull of trying to keep motorbikes out and letting all good green space users in, very difficult. But what is the examination of all these sites in terms of, if you have a chicane at one end and an A-frame at the other, residents aren't very happy with that because they don't consider that enough access. Obviously the chicane doesn't stop the motorbike either getting into that green space. So all we are actually doing, unfortunately, is stopping the legitimate user having full traversing access. That's it really. I think it's a piece of work I am working on in my ward. And I say I don't bring it up as a criticism, but these mobility vehicles are getting bigger, and the frames are so narrow, and I think they have worked well. But sometimes people can pick up a thing at a bike up as well. But if they were 4 inches wider, 2 inches on either side, most of these vehicles can get through. So I don't know directly what the answer is, but other than enlarge them all slightly. But I think it's something we could be looking at on behalf of being an accessible Leeds and an age-friendly Leeds.
We undertake, when we do the LQP assessments, we undertake obviously one of the scores is about access. So we do have a measure of accessibility. The strategy also commits us to do a more detailed audit on access on each of the sites. And that is something that we're looking to work with partners to actually undertake during the life of the strategy. I think it's a short-term action, is it, in the strategy? I think so. So it is one that we're looking to pick up in the next year or so to actually move that forward. And we've been talking to the Parks Forum about doing that, so some of the friends and volunteer groups can get involved and do the audit. So that's something we can look at. You raise a good point. There isn't no golden solution to this. What we're doing on most new developments where we do need to put access controls in, we are using chicanes. We're obviously consulting the council's access officer to try and find a way forward in terms of that can meet the community safety elements that we're looking to do, but also to allow genuine users to be able to access the site. So we are using chicanes. A lot of our new developments, we're putting chicanes in, but we do have a legacy of A-frames. And as those sites get refreshed and developed, then obviously we'll look into those access arrangements. And as we do the audits, we'll be revisiting sites as a result of those audits to actually look and see what we can do as well, because there might be some really quick actions that we can do to improve the site. But it is at a balance of, like you said, antisocial behaviour too. So it's a challenge and it's a balance, but it is something we are actively addressing.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. It's good to hear that the service perhaps is saying that it is going to take responsibility for that, because as we often find with very large services, for example, at the moment I'm doing defibrillators in my ward, that we realized nobody had an overview of the situation. So that is now something that the ward members are overseeing. So it's really good to hear that it isn't one of those matters where everyone assumes that somebody else is sorting it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll start also by thanking officers for their hard work the last year, and particularly you, Sean. I hope you have a nice retirement. All right, sure you've deserved it after all these years working for the council. And I can never say her name properly, but I'd also like to place on record Duja, yeah, who has been very helpful this year with the 3 little projects that we have in Yeadon, actually, as it turns out. I'd also like to thank officers for all the support they've provided to the community groups, so the Friends of Engine Fields, the Shevin Friends, etc. So that's the nice bit done. Now the challenging bit. I want to ask about the measuring the outcomes of the 50 hectares of trees every year. The little whips are being planted in many places, and I think it's Victoria that's leading on that from our point of view, Victoria Marsden. Are we measuring success of that? Because clearly there won't be. And I think we've set 5 million trees over the next 25 years. There won't be 5 million trees that survive. Do we have a view as to what we think would be success? Or are we just measuring the input, but not the output of those 50 hectares every year? I get that we've got 6 city parks, but I also have, and I'm going to take the opportunity here to talk about toilets in destination parks. And I have obviously Yeadon Tarn, which the last time I was updated has over a million adult visits a year. And I have Wharf Meadows Park. And the single biggest criticism or concern issue raised with ward members is the lack of toilet facilities, despite there being toilets in those destination parks, either not being open or not being accessible. I just want to raise that whilst I've got the opportunity, because I can't believe that we're the only part of the city that has problems with functioning toilets. Play parks. Play parks, they seem to take a very, very long time to come from fruition. I know that particularly in my own ward, we're slow at telling Thuja that we want to progress. But once we have told it, it seems that it can take forever for a park to go from design through consultation to implement or into implementation and opening. And why is that? And finally, I just wanted to ask about our commitment to wilding our green spaces. Last year, for the first time, we wilded a bit of Wharf Meadows Park in the formal part. And I have to say it went down very, very well with the local community. And I'd like to see Parks and Countryside offer up more wilding opportunities. And does it save money, or is it cost neutral, or does it cost money? Thank you. There's a lot there, but it's a big department to get everything in, and I've only got one chance.
Yeah, so if I come back to that, so I'll come back to the naturalised areas. There isn't a cost saving it's just a different way of managing a particular space. So it has different inputs, but it's not really a cost saving in terms of that. But what we do want to encourage more, I mean, we brought to executive board, approved a paper about adapting our parks and green spaces for climate change a number of years back. And that is about actually how we can create more pollinating areas, more natural habitats, more tree planting, etc., onto our spaces. And that is one of the reasons why the strategy is very one of the underpinning actions in the strategy is to create for every community park a plan on a page, and that plan will be all encompassing in terms of what the potential of that space could be, in terms of play, in terms of healthy walks, in terms of being wildlife friendly, in terms of helping with adaptation to climate change, so and accessibility. So all of the things we discussed today, we want to build into a plan on a page so that every site will have a plan that members can lead on, that local communities can be consulted on, and everybody has ownership and a share of that. And we think that will be a fantastic driver to encourage volunteering, to encourage participation and encourage investment. So that's one of the key things that's running through the strategy. In terms of the tree canopy, we plant the 4,000 trees per hectare because we know that once we get to the point of survival, that will create enough mature trees to create a tree canopy that covers that hectareage. So it's not just about inputs, it's about that will guarantee that particular tree canopy cover, and that's what this is all about. So out of 4,000 small young trees, you only probably need about 30 to 40 mature trees in the end of the period to get to a point where that hectare is covered with a green canopy. So you can have some fantastic trees. The reason why you plant them in such high densities is that because what happens is those trees start to compete with each other as they start to develop. And then that encourages the trees to grow quicker because they are more tightly planted. And then as you manage that and thin them out over the years, they are still relatively close. So you actually get quicker growth going upwards and outwards. And that's how you create the canopy quicker. That's not something we've invented. That's recommendations from the Forestry Commission. There's been lots of research in this. Lots of cleverer people than us in the party service. So we are actually following good scientific and good industry practice in terms of being able to create that tree canopy. But that does need managing, and as Councillor Smith says, we have grant funding that allows us to manage that canopy progression for the first 15 years in place currently now. And then finally, just picking up on toilets. Most parks don't have public toilets, but some do. So, for example, the specific sites that the councillor referred to is there's an arrangement with the cafe in terms of the lease for the cafe, whereby those toilets are to be made available for public use in the cafe when the cafe is open. So if the cafe is not allowing people to use those, then we can raise that with them. We can pick that up in terms of their conditions of their lease, because that was an efficient way of providing toilet facilities without actually having the cost directed to the council. And then there are some public toilets at Eden Town. I don't know what commission they're in, whether they're open or not, because I know that they were refurbished a number of years ago. So it's something I'll look into, and I'll get Fuja to come back to if that's okay.
Been written to again.
All right, okay. Yeah, so we'll chase that up and get back to the councillors.
Just on the trees then, so would it, if we get 30 or 40 that create the canopy out of 4,000, this is sort of would it be better just to plant 30 or 40 larger trees? Because one of the problems we have is that people complain about all the whips being destroyed. Yeah, and they say, what a terrible waste of money. Wouldn't it be better to put in bigger trees that don't get destroyed and don't get knocked over by rabbits and dogs and kicked out by kids, and get your canopy that way?
So, I mean, you could plant 40 trees, but it would be a slow way of getting them to maturity to create the canopy. Because what you do need is that competition. So the most efficient way and the scientifically proven way to create that canopy quickly is to follow the methodology that we've adopted. The other benefits of that, of course, is that you create some really valuable habitat as they're growing up, because you've got that density. So, you get lots of benefits. It's not just about canopy and about clean air. It's about, it is about the types of habitat that will provide, because we put a mix of species in there. So that works really well. But I can assure members, and we have evidence of this all over the city, that where you plant an extra heavy standard tree, I can guarantee that if you plant whips next to it, within about 5 years or 6 years, those whips will be taller than the standard tree, and that will have hardly moved compared to the transplants. So it is an efficient way of creating that canopy.
Okay. Okay, right. Councillor Thompson, then Councillor Wadsworth, and then Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I have got 4, but I'll try and keep them brief. Firstly, how much did it cost to put in the levelling up bids for the parks, for the potential investment in those, please? This will probably need to be addressed elsewhere, but concerns raised at the Outer North West Committee this week about the cost of using approved contractors and not necessarily the quality following, and the overall cost of, obviously there is inflation in construction, but if you could shed any light on that, we may need to explore it further elsewhere. Provision for older children and young people in parks in particular, especially girls and young women, but not exclusively. And one question that's been raised with me by the Green team from a local parish church is about relaxed mowing in closed graveyards where where parks are responsible. It has been referred to bereavement, but I've not heard anything back. Thank you.
Sean?
Just starting off, I don't have any details of the levelling up. The levelling up fund bids were coordinated for the regeneration team. So they worked, really hard pulling all those together. So we provided our officer time in terms of the expertise about what we wanted to see, but it's that regeneration team that were managing the whole bid. So they will have the costs of that. In terms of contractors, obviously we go out to competition. So the prices that come back from the contractors are done in a competitive environment. If there are any specific issues regarding performance of an individual contractor on a specific site, we can pick that up individually. If you speak to, I don't know what's your ward, councillor?
Geisley Road.
Oh, sorry, Geisley. Yeah. So Geisley, so that'll be Fuja. If you raise that with Fuja, then she'll gladly look into that for you. And in terms of relaxed mowing, when we brought the paper about how we can improve habitats and things, there's an initiative called God's Acre that the Church of England have been following, for closed churchyards, to try and encourage practitioners of those sites to actually have more relaxed mowing in nature areas. That's something we actively support. So while the city is responsible for horticultural maintenance on closed churchyards, we'd be more than happy to work with community teams and the local diocese if they agreed for us to be able to relax that regime, because we'd like to do more of that and it can look fantastic. And then in terms of provision for girls and older children, what I'm going to do, I'm going to hand over to Emma, if that's all right, because Emma's been leading on a particular project within the service regarding women's safety and activities for young people.
Well, firstly, just for older children and teenagers in general, that was something that came out of the consultation we did on the strategy, that people would like us to do more. So one of the actions in the strategy is to consult teenagers about what they'd like to see in parks. So we're going to do that. We haven't done it yet, but that is in our short-term plan. And then with specific reference to teenage girls, there's an organisation, a charity called Make Space for Girls that you probably know of, who've done a lot of work to identify what teenage girls are interested in parks, and the fact that a lot of the facilities nationally that are provided for teenagers tend to be mostly used by boys, so skate parks and multi-use games areas. So we're very aware of that now. It's been shared with the officers who work on developing our sites, and we're involved in the ongoing research. And that research that I told you about before, that they're going to create a design guide for parks, that will acknowledge the importance of considering the needs of women and girls when designing new parks. So hopefully that's all coming together at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. The bid that Councillor Thompson is referring to is the bowling club in Kirk Lane Park, which you know well, Sean. And I think that what has happened there is that during the inflation busting exercise to get the cost back, the bid has changed a little bit and been added on to, and there is some issues around some cost of some flooring. Now, I don't know the cost of flooring. I'm not a flooring salesman, but it is upsetting some members around that. So I think that's that case. The toilets was my issue with regard to the tarn. We, Councillor Leigh and myself, have been written to, and I think the issue with the toilets at the tarn is that they are advertised to be open certain hours, and they are not open those certain hours, I believe. Now, people go to the tarn, particularly for cardiac exercise, because it's flat and it's a mile and you can go right round. But during cardiac treatment, they also are given a tablet to remove water. And so that means that they need to go to the toilet more often. Quite often cardiac patients are diabetic anyway, which would mean that they would need to remove water more rapidly and quickly and not have the time. So I think that is where the problem comes, is if we're advertising our toilets are open, people are going up there with the intention of that is a good place to go because they can use the loo, and then finding they can't. That is a big problem to them. So we need to be clearer about our toilets and clearer about how we update our toilets, because I expect what has happened, and my suspicion is that there are either hours, and those hours are only summer hours, and they're not open in the winter because we've only just recently been into. All the toilets have been vandalised, which you and I know that is very common up at the town to have the toilets vandalised, and they've been closed for that purpose. But the website or the information, wherever we give it out, wherever this person has got the information from, hasn't been updated, and that's the problem. But we have to be smarter at that, because particularly the time, people are going for a specific purpose. And thirdly is back to these whips and these small trees. You know, I'm not sold on small trees being put in, and I do think that you could have, in initial stages, left it a couple of years and put larger trees in. But you have subsequently, particularly in Nunroyd Park, which you also know well, have fenced off the tree planting areas. Has that been successful? Are you going to do more of it? Or has it been unsuccessful? No, they fenced them off all over the city. There's areas of Morley that are fenced off. But the toilets are specific to Otley and Eden, actually.
So, I mean, I won't dwell too much on toilets. I'll pick up those issues. The toilets are open and closed by the Safer Leeds team, the mobile teams. We used to do that with Parks Patrol, but they've been integrated in with that team because it's more efficient to, you know, integrate those mobile patrols. So I'll pick that up and find out what's going on with that. I mean, I don't think anything particular. The fencing, oh, sorry, yeah, the fencing off the trees, yeah. So what we do is if there's a block of planting that is sufficiently large enough to be fenced off with rabbit-proof fencing, for example, we will use rabbit-proof fencing rather than put individual tree spirals around them to protect them from grazing, because it's more efficient. So it does depend on the site, and then also we've had one or two areas where the trees have been broken down by people walking across the site. So we might use some wire and post fencing just to stop people doing that. So this is only our third season of this initiative, so it's been a learning curve, you know, and we're learning about what works and what doesn't. So we've probably done more fencing this year than we've done previously, and we'll evaluate that and see how that's worked. So well, let's hope the outcomes are positive.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for coming back in. Just very quickly on the tree fencing, I know that we've had a dog injured. So is it worth looking at putting some sort of, I don't know, tape or something around so that we can actually warn owners that there's a fence there? That's just a very quick one. My actual question was around no mow May. We get a lot of complaints in no mow May, and I just think that there are areas that it's suitable for and areas that it's less suitable for. The areas that I think it's less suitable for are the retirement life complexes, for example, where you've got housebound residents who then look out for 6 or 8 weeks onto what they consider to be, you know, an unkempt area. Now, we know why we're doing it and we understand the reasoning behind it, but unfortunately, they don't always understand that, and they actually want to look out onto a nicer aspect. So I think that it doesn't necessarily work in those areas. I also think that it doesn't necessarily work in our cemeteries and graveyards, because people want to go and visit their loved ones and they don't want to go when the grass is too high, or then we cut the grass and it's everywhere. And they're going because they're grieving, they want to remember their loved ones. And again, I think it just gives the wrong impression. So, you know, I understand the reasoning behind it all, but I just think that we need to maybe be slightly more mindful where we do and don't cut. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, just on the cemetery. So in terms of, I mean, the council was referring to closed churchyards, which are generally, what you generally find in closed churchyards is that the burials are probably quite a lot of them mid-Victorian. So you don't generally have any relatives. I'm not saying that's the case all the time, but most of the graves are quite, people generally don't leave mementos and things because the families it's a few generations down, and those graves are no longer tended by those families. But where we have our other cemeteries, you know, it is about a mixed regime and what's appropriate, because we've got some very old cemeteries where, you know, relaxed mowing works well and wild areas. But then where we've got areas that are relatively new in terms of burial space and graves, then those are tended to families and they are usually regularly cut. In terms of No More May, we don't choose not to just cut areas in May just as part of that regime. What we do have is we identify sites that have a relaxed mowing regime and sites that are regularly mowed. So if there are any sites that you think are inappropriate for that relaxed mowing, then if you raise that with us, we can look into that and look at the reasons why. But alternatively too, we'd like to do more relaxed mowing. So if there are any sites that you think we can do more relaxed mowing on, you know, we'd be happy to accommodate that as well. So, you know, we do try and get the right balance provision.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
But in terms of like, I mean, a lot of the sheltered housing and things are actually managed by our colleagues in housing. We manage the contract on their behalf and they tell us what regime they would like on that particular site and we implement that. So quite a lot of it is some of the decisions are taken by housing managers and we will take their advice on that.
Thank you. Just very quickly, Chair. Sorry, Councillor Akhtar, but Pudsey Cemetery is a prime example of it's a Victorian cemetery. Is that, you know, we do have a lot of graves that are no longer managed and tended by family, but it's still a working cemetery. So we do have new burials as well. So, you know, that was kind of, you know, that and others, I'm sure, is kind of there. But I take your point, and you know, we do need to do more relaxed mowing, and we do need to take more care of the environment. But as I say, I do think it just needs to be I don't know, more mindful, I'll say. But you know, it's a learning curve for us all, because this is a journey that we've only been doing 2, 3, 4 seasons now. So I do take the point that, you know, we need to work collaboratively, and I think all elected members have maybe got a, you know, a place to sort of deal with that and work with everybody as well. Thank you.
Just got some points I want to make myself. Whether you answer them, I'm fine if you want to part them. But in terms of Section 106 monies, there's no doubt that that's a diminishing resource now, because for good or for bad, SIL is replacing it and it's making it more difficult. So I do think we need to develop a strategy as a council, not in the next 10, 15 minutes, but to how we're going to replace that and how we're going to get access to that money, because it is becoming more and more difficult. The other thing is security, which comes back to the point that Councillor Tudor was making, is this conflict between allowing access and keeping places secure. There's 1 or 2 areas where we've got a quad bike problem. Now, fine, you can put up big fences, but that means you've then not got the free movement. So it's how you deal with that. And I'm sorry, Councillor Akhtar, but to give an example here, in my ward, we put a massive boulder. No. We put a massive boulder to try and stop people accessing, and all they did was they came along and pulled the boulder out themselves. You know, so, and the cost, and it's where you're going to get the money to cover the cost, just things like that. The backlog, is there any way you could produce a spreadsheet and come to each elected ward member to show what's outstanding in their areas and where you are, and so that we can see it moving from red to amber and then to green, so that we've got an idea, because a number of residents are asking what's happened to this, and that might be one way of working it up to show where the problems are coming back on. You talked about the plan on the page, and we talked about it at the chair's brief as well. Is that going to include the development strategy for those areas as well? So again, if you talk about Golden Acre Park, that would definitely have something about trying to improve the car parking facilities. The fact that it's not fundable at the moment is fine. But you know, and on that point, is there any way we can have member involvement in the quality park assessments that Councillor Khan was talking about, so that we can all understand what's happening? So in other words, an elected member, 1 or all 3 are invited to go along to actually see in a way how professional your staff are in terms of carrying out those assessments, And sometimes the local perspective might shade a position one way or the other. It's just something to think about. And I think that's about it. Just to come back to a point that Councillor Thompson made when we were talking about the additional costs. There was one HAP bid that's been returned to you because the costs have got out of hand. Now, one of the things I think that might be happening is because of the backlog, it was already agreed, you know, say 18 months ago that this was what was going to be done. Those were the prices at the time. The world has moved on. And because you've got a backlog, you've actually got, we're building up a lot of problems for that. And I don't know how we solve that, but that one leads to the other, I would say, to be quite honest. It's not necessarily, it's nothing you've done wrong. It's just that the backlog's there. And, you know, some officers in your department were better, shall we say, at getting a quart out of a pint pot. Others, you know, and if you get my drift in terms of that, they were very good at spending money wisely and frugally. The Yorkshire tendency, the Scottish bias was certainly coming out on occasions. But so these are my points, but I'm not asking you to answer them. I just didn't take a note of them as to issues that I think what's been said today and where we're coming from. So on that note, although I want to now move on to the one, where is it? Long-term supply of burial space. So Councillor Reif, do you want to introduce this one and then pass over?
Yes, Chair, just a few words. So this report sets out the provision of long-term burial supply for Leeds City Council owned and operated cemeteries. In 2018, the council adopted the plan and over the last 15 years has invested in additional cemetery provision to ensure that the city has an adequate supply of burial space. The report informs scrutiny of the current position and what the future plans are to ensure that we continue to meet these requirements. I'll pass over to Sean, who will go through the report. Thank you.
Okay, so it's quite a succinct report, but I'll take you through the key points of it. So, so as Councillor said, 2008 Executive Board received a report that reviewed the long-term burial supply in the city, and that report gave options for meeting that demand over the next 50 years. So the table in paragraph 3 lays out the position in 2008. So at that time we had just short of 8,500 new graves across the city, and that was equivalent to 15 to 16 year supply. And you can see from that from the table that we actually split the city into 3 areas that capture those. So it's east, north, east, west, northwest, south, southeast, and that's the model that we've used going forward. So when we looked, when Executive Board looked at that table, you could see that east, north, east only had at that time 1,000 available graves, and that was because Hare Hills was the only active cemetery in the area. So there was quite a bit of pressure in terms of space. And a decision at that meeting then was taken to actually construct new cemeteries at Winmore and Elmet near Roundy. And Winmore became operational on July the 14th. Elmet got planning consent, but has not since been developed into an operational cemetery because we've got capacity at Winmore. Cemeteries at Garth and Kippax were also extended, and this had the impact of increasing burial supply in the east northeast area. But it did mean then that we needed to look in the southeast area of the city. So to address that shortfall, some new burial provisions were provided at Hunslet Cemetery, and along with phase 1 of an extension at Cottingley Cemetery. So the current position now is in table 5, and that is current to November 2022 when we did the last audit. So you can see that there's an average that we've actually got just short of 6,000 new graves available, and that leaves us with about 14.2 years average capacity. But going forward, where are the opportunities to make sure that we've got 50 years provision? So that we can extend Cottingley further onto a formal playing pitch. That will provide another 630 graves, and that would add 7.1 years to the southeast total, giving a total or then of 20, just short of 21 years for that particular area. Winmore Cemetery is operational, and the first 5 hectares has been brought into use, but we do have planning consent for a further 12 acres up there. So we have the opportunity to bring that 12 acres into operational use. If we did that, that would add around further 7,000 graves and would take availability past 54 years. We know that particular area probably has a solution now. We've also got the land at Elmit Lane at Roundy, that's owned by the council. That's a 7-acre site. 1 acre of it we can actively bury in now. We actually have planning consent for that. But 4 acres would need to do further research because of some archaeological evidence and potential archaeological artifacts under there and evidence of years gone by. So we would need to do some further work on that. But that would actually give us a further 594 graves, add another 34 years availability. So again, that northeast area is probably covered off. And if we did that, the table in paragraph 9 lays out what the effects of that would be. So you can see that if we did those improvements over the next few years, then the average lifespan of our cemeteries in Leeds goes up to 34.3 years. So there's quite adequate provision. Obviously, when you look at it, west northwest then is the one with 16.6 years. So that's probably one that would need looking at in the medium term. And that is a piece of work that will probably get picked up in the next few years to actually take that forward. But you can see, and I hope that gives scrutiny some comfort that we are on top of the plan and we are making provision to make sure we've got adequate amounts of burial space.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Atkin.
Chair, couple of questions. One is to do with the west northwest, which comes under our neck of the wood, onto the not only my ward, by the way, but the other wards as well in the city, and there are many. But you know, when we talk about the faith burials, for example, if someone lives in West Park of the city, as far as Guiseley, let's say, and if they've got to travel from Guiseley to Winmore, it's a bit of a journey. And if I talk about people who live in Wheatwood or heading to Hyde Park, Little London Woodhouse, and so on and so forth, so there is an issue, and that issue has been raised on numbers of occasions before 2008, and we're still in a discussion to talk about those communities. And there are many of my faith members from the Muslim community who live in West Northwest, not only the Pakistanis or the Kashmiris, but we've got such a huge Arab community living in far end of the west of the city. So, and I think it's something that we need to address this particular issue with regards to the faith burials in that part of the city. And second, with regards to the Elmit side, I think, and that's my personal opinion, that site should have been used some time ago, and we need to talk to other faith communities and see if we can find a way forward, rather than having a site which has not been used for a number of years. That needs to be utilized. So, Chair, once again, I've got great concern about people living at the west northwest part of the city, and that's something, rather than having a midterm, we need to have a short-term addressing position where people can feel comfort. If you bury a loved one and then obviously 10 years down the road, you'll have to find another site. So it's not fair on those communities. So I think we need to have a proper discussion with those communities across West Northwest.
Sean?
So I mean, I understand where council is coming from. I mean, I will say all our cemeteries are multi-faith. So every cemetery is open to anybody of any particular faith or no faith to actually be buried in. And we have just short of 17 years provision in the West Northwest as it currently stands. But there is a piece of work that we do need to look at, you know, ensuring that the West Northwest has adequate supply to take us up to that 50-year ideal solution. So taking that point, so there is adequate provision. But it is very much up to the individuals where they choose to be buried. And like I say, up to where you live within Leeds, any of those cemeteries you can be chosen to be buried in.
Chair, I absolutely respect and welcome multi-faith cemeteries in the city, but I do not know of any anywhere in this part of the location that we are referring to, northwest part of the city, if there are any multi-faith cemeteries. Now, yes, absolutely, you can bury anyone anywhere, but I rather would like to see, and I speak behalf of many faiths in the city, where I feel that they will feel more comfortable if there are section of those cemeteries allocated to those communities, like the way we have in Winmore Cemetery. So I think that's something needs to look into for the west and northwest part of the city. As I explained earlier on, traveling from those areas to Winmore is difficult for those who don't have ways of commuting to this particular site, and especially if you got to catch buses. I think it's 2 or 3 buses before you can go from Wheatwood, Headingley, Hyde Parks, or Little London to this particular site to pay your respect to your loved ones. So I think I welcome the multi-faith cemeteries, but however, I would like to see a section of those communities, and I specifically press upon for the Muslim community and other communities as well.
Just to say, I'll take your point, councillor, yeah, and feed that back.
Just 2 really quick ones. Just on I know that everyone's talking about their own wards, so I'll bring up Cottingley. It says subject to planning consent and consultation. Is there a timescale on that consultation? It's not something that I'm completely aware of. I suppose in anywhere in the city, how long those consultations will be going on for and how long they'll take to get sort of community opinions on things. And then just secondly, with it being on a former playing pitch area, how are you working out sort of striking the balance between green space that is necessary in communities like Cottingley? I don't know if you've been to Cottingley, but it's straight off a main road. Green space is really important in areas like that. So just how you're striking that balance between, the long-term burial plan and also keeping our green spaces and places for play.
So it's a good point. So I mean, the proposal to extend the potential to extend Cottingley Cemetery would not take all of that available space. It would just take a part of the playing pitch that's at the back of the site, effectively. So it's not taking it all. It's trying to find a balance of provision. But nevertheless, there is a need to provide burial capacity as well. So it is a trade-off between one and the other, but not exclusively at the expense of recreation. So it could be that as part of that scheme, part of that the recreation ground that is remaining can be improved as part of it to actually increase its sort of recreational value. So that is a positive thing that we can do forward. The scheme itself we've got some preliminary plan, and we undertook some preliminary planning advice and some site investigations. It's not progressed past that stage yet, but I can assure you as a local councillor that you'd be fully engaged and consulted with in terms of its development and how we'd want to sell that particular idea to the community and go through that planning process.
You want to come back in again? You're okay. Got Councillor Lay, then Councillor Khan.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of questions, really. One, how do you, not you, but in 2008, we had 8,500 new graves approximately, which was equivalent to 15 to 16 years at that time. I know that the west northwest had 4,300, let's say. 15 years later, we're down to 1,700. So there's sort of been a 2,500 used in those 15 years. Are burials as popular as they've always been, or are we seeing more cremations? How do we know that we need these many graves when perhaps times are changing? And the second thing was, in our pre-meeting, Councillor Brooks talked about on the continent, some countries take up. That was you, was that? Oh, I thought you were the one who was talking about. One of the councillors was talking about on the continent they removed the bones and put them in a vault of something. Would we ever get to that point, do you think? Or would you support that as a council? Because we don't do that, I don't think, do we? They sit in the ground for hundreds of years.
Point first. So the 50-year burial plan is about creating enough capacity so that we don't need to do that. So I'm aware that places that are in London, for example, that is an option that they're seriously looking at, but it's not something that we've ever considered within the local authority district, because we do have a plan for adequate provision taking us forward for 50 years. So that is available. In terms of how we work out capacity, so we work out the average, the actual numbers of burials with new graves that we've constructed in each cemetery over the last 6 years. We take an average of that and we just divide that into the number of available grave spaces. So that keeps us current with current trends. And the current trend is that the number of burials is going down and the number of cremations is going up. But obviously you get some specific faith groups where burial is the only option because of the specific faith requirements, and the requirement to provide burial space for those specific faiths is actually increasing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, just follow on from my neighbour Annie regarding the southeast provision. I know, thank you, Sean, for assuring that there is some provision in Cottonley Cemetery and planning, due to planning and consultation. But, you know, also Hunslet's not far from Cottonley. And what's the provision there for at the moment for burials? And how fast, you know, what's your prediction? Because last few years, cemeteries are getting filled up, you know, because I went to Winmore Cemetery a few months ago, and then I went to Cottonley recently, and the cemeteries were what 75% full. So how fast, when is the threshold then we start going into next process?
Just to answer the specific question, so Hunslet Cemetery's got 30 years provision based on average demand currently, so there's quite adequate supply in Hunslet. Cottingley has got 4.3 years provision left based on current demand. So that is one of the reasons why we're looking to move forward the extension for Cottingley in terms of a priority, in terms of cemetery expansion. So, you know, that is something that we will be actively working on. So, you know, we are on top of it. We do monitor it and it's reviewed every year. And you know, we have some specific projects that as a result of that we are picking up and moving forward, and there is provision in the capital programme as well to be able to deliver that.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick point going back onto your previous comment where cremations the numbers are increasing. Have we got sufficient capacity around the city to ensure that the loved ones from a particular community can actually be commemorated within their community? Because obviously we don't have crematoria all over the city. We only have certain crematoria. I daren't speak, but I know we don't have anything specific in Pudsey. And we're not alone. It's, you know, I think it's a citywide thing. You know, we go out to Lawnswood or to Rawdon, and then we have to bring our loved ones somewhere close by or leave them there. And I just think that, you know, if our loved ones are brought back into our community to be remembered within our community, you know, that would be a good thing, particularly, as you say, if cremation numbers are increasing. Is that something that we've got a plan for?
So, I mean, most local authorities don't have more than one crematorium. I mean, in Leeds, we're quite fortunate. We have three, spread throughout the city. And in each of the grounds of those crematoria, there are memorial gardens. So we do offer that. We do offer the option for families to strew the remains in those particular memorial gardens. That's also strewing ashes is also available at any one of our cemeteries. So if families wanted to strew the ashes in a local cemetery, then that's available too. We also offer, you can have your cremated remains buried in a small plot. So it's not as big as a large burial plot, but we do offer cremation plots. So again, that's an option. So there's lots of options for memorialisation that we do offer. It's all available on our website. And so there is lots. But then there's also lots of things that people can do in their own space to memorialise their family. And you know, we do offer, you know, there are other options for memorial trees and things like that in some parks. So we do offer a wide range as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, listening to what's been said here, I think we need to spatially plan for cemeteries, amongst other things. Now, whether it's the green cemeteries or whether it's standard cemeteries or whether it's local community cemeteries, I think we've got to start spatially planning it so that when they put their call for sites out, some sites might not be suitable for purpose X, but they might be suitable for purpose Y. And I think it would be worthwhile consulting on those at the same time. So it might be worthwhile speaking to planning so that when they're doing it, that it's part of it and then we can plan accordingly. It's just a point. Right, in that case, then, can I want to take items 7 and 8 together. I am suggesting that we endorse the actions and the progress that's been set out and we comment accordingly and thank everybody. And finally, it's Sean's last scrutiny board. He is the epitome of man and boy, or boy and man when he started, because he started off, I'm sure, in shorts. But, you know, it's an example, I think, to a lot of people of how you can progress up through the council, starting, as it were, on the trainee type things and ending up where you are. Can I thank you for your 40 years? Is it? You know, I'll be honest, you don't look as though you've been here for 40 years. I mean, you know, most of us have been around for that time of getting bald or going grey, to be quite frank. But thank you for your service. And formally, I would like to put on the minutes, you know, the work that you've done, the commitment you've given to the city, and no doubt you'll complain to your local councillors about parks not being right, and you can. But thank you for what you've done, and every success, and whatever it is you're going to do in the future. You might go about designing gardens for all I know, or but no, seriously, thank you very much for your time. Does anybody else want to add any other comments yet?
Chair, I think it's important to mention that I have known Sean since 1995, and there are many people who started early years and they worked really closely with elected members, and Sean is one of those individuals who listens and then delivers and work with the elected members and to make sure those schemes take place. The last scheme that we had in our neck of the wood was where we were having some trouble with the travelers, and we wanted to put a fence across the estate, and it was about a meter or so, 1 kilometer or so to go around in the estate, just bottom end of the Kirks Road. It wouldn't have happened so quick if we wouldn't have good officers like Sean. And as I said, knowing someone for the more than 25 years is a great loss to our authority, losing someone like Sean. But however, it's good to see someone who's been with the council for the last 40 years and now he will have a peaceful retirement. So thank you, Sean, for everything that you have done on behalf of our local residents.
Yeah, just briefly, what I said at the beginning, from bottom of my heart, Sean, thank you, what you've done for this, for the city of Leeds. And you have made a massive impact on our green spaces in parks across the city. And yes, as Chair said, because you started from the bottom and then went to the top, and you knew what were the issues and how to approach people. You were, like I said to you at the beginning, you were a very, very approachable person. And I wish you all, wish you good luck, whatever your future retirement's you want to do. I just want to say thank you.
Well, Sean, you certainly don't look ready for retirement, so I hope you'll be joining the Friends of Unright on your first day. But yeah, I mean, working up from the bottom, you've always been very, very receptive to our issues in Guyton Road and previously in Roundy, I have to say. How will Councillor Arif manage without losing two very senior officers in as many months? Because that's what's happened with parks. And so there'll be very big shoes to fill. But I'm pleased that you are going to hopefully enjoy your lengthy retirement. Thanks, Sean. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you. In my capacity as shadow member for Parks and Countryside, I'd like to put on record my thanks. And the help and guidance that you've given me in my role has been second to none. I think we've worked very closely together. We've collaborated and come up with some pretty good ideas. And I wish you every success in your retirement, every happiness, and long may it be. We definitely don't want you in item 8.
No. What you saying about?
I mean, I'm really moved. It's really kind of you, and thank you very much. I mean, I can just say that it's been an absolute privilege to work for Leeds City Council and the Parks and Countryside Service. It's what I wanted to do when I was from being at school. I was lucky enough to get an apprenticeship at 16. I can highly recommend it to everybody. It's brilliant. Ward members that we deal with, brilliant. The community is fantastic. And I've been so lucky to work for Leeds, because Leeds has some real vision regarding its parks and green spaces, and it's been brilliant. So thank you very much, everybody.
So just to ask members to note that there is a working group on the Air Quality Action Plan on the 27th of February. You've all received an invitation that will be taking place remotely, and draft dates for the next municipal year have also been circulated.
And we've got, as just been said, Friday the 27th of February, a remote working group. So thank you all very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you.